And welcome back to the Talking Archive. I'm Josh Jacobs. We're continuing our conversation with world-famous Tom Murphy. Now, after you turned down the job to be the production director at the new 93 KJR Boss Radio, you became the afternoon DJ at KJR 95 Seattle for the next 6 years. Tell us how that came about.
Well, actually, there was a guy that I'd worked with in Portland named Gary Taylor. And he had gone, so I just quit KISN. I didn't have a job. I'm going to L.A., and I'm going to try to replace Dean Stockwell. I don't know what I was thinking. But anyway, the thing was that I'd had a bunch of dances and promotions and stuff for the last year I was at KISN. So I had really made some pretty good money. You know, I did have some money. It didn't take too long, for me to run through that, but so it wasn't, quite as insane as it may sound. But anyway, I went to, California, and that was kind of my plan, was to, try to get on to not KHJ necessarily. Actually, I did a couple of overnighters at KRLA just as kind of a lark.
Wow.
But I didn't really give it much thought because it didn't really mean much because it wasn't going to turn into anything, And again, the thing was, like when you went to most radio stations, you had to learn to run the board and do all kinds of stuff. Well, in L.A. and New York and Chicago and probably Philadelphia and a couple other cities, you had an engineer. So, if you could, give him the signal to turn on your mic, you were home free. They were doing all the work,
Oh, yeah. Did you have your own engineer at both KISN as well as KJR, or did you do...
No. We all ran our own boards up there,
And
even the real Don Steele ran his own board, baby.
Wow. Now, the music came from a 45, and then the jingles and the commercials, were those on reel-to-reel or cart?
Carts.
Oh, okay.
We were very fast. Don Burden was... well, first of all, he was a big spender. I mean, he promotions, giving away cars and money and TVs. In those days, a color TV was $700. That was a hell of a nice prize.
Oh, yeah.
And so anyway, he was early on with the cart machines. He saw them at the original. Well, I might not have my history totally correct, but I'm not too far off, and probably nobody's still alive to find out anyway. But apparently, the cart machines originally were designed for home use. And the thing was, people like to have stuff on tape, but I had to put the reel on that thing and then run it down and put it through that. It's just a pain in the ass. Well, how about if you just take this and shove it in? Shove it in the machine. Now that I can do, And that was why nobody could figure out that the first machines were Collins. That was the company with the patents. Mm-hmm. And later on they became ITC, and then they came, Big Eddie's, cart machines. I don't know. But anyway, they had a real wide mouth. And the reason was they were designed for home use. Mm. And so, they had a wide 30-minute cart. And so, the first ones, of course, we didn't use them that way. We just had the little 2 or 3 minute ones. Mm-hmm. But the first ones had weak motors, so, hi, everybody. So that was pretty good, actually. And they would... you'd you'd get a small cartridge, but you might have, 10 or 15 spots on it, Mm-hmm. And, of course, the Q zones didn't always pick up, so you might run 3 commercials for Newman's Chevrolet before you could get the thing stopped. So the cart machines were great, and we had some of the first ones at KISN, but they also... They could cause you some concern, when...
Wow. But the music was still played from 45 then?
Yeah. They didn't... I don't think people started, actually carting the music, until the 70s, I don't think, well-played records, Yeah,
because I remember first time seeing the cart machine back about 30 years ago, and the first thought that came to my mind... Oh, my gosh, these look just like 8-track tapes.
Oh, you mean the carts themselves?
The carts themselves, yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, it seems to me, and I could be wrong about this, and I don't care. Kind of a person I've turned into. Home Alone in Granada Hills, you get a little surly. But the first, I kind of forgot my train of thought. What was I talking about here? Oh, as far as the records, I don't recall any of us ever carding records until like the mid-'70s.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, I think so. I remember I was working in Cincinnati, just kind of between, gigs, and they were starting to card up the music, and that was kind of, but the cart machines were better, and the cartridges themselves were better, And then by the time I got back out here to L.A. at KISS, everything was on cart,
Now, with KJR Seattle, you said you got to do a lot of concerts from the Beach Boys. Who are your favorite artists that you got to meet? I remember you said you loved meeting Gene Clark from the Byrds. Was one of the nicest people.
that was down here. That my friend, one of my all-time dear friends who passed here a couple of years ago now, was a friend of Gene's, and they had been in the Christie Minstrels. And so when Jeff left and went on to solo stuff, and as did Gene with the Byrds, and so. It was really funny. They were playing at Ciro's at the time. They were the house band, and so Gene would always leave Jeff and my name at the door, and Jeff and I'd go in, and they were great. They were fun to watch. Oh, yeah. And we'd have free drinks because it would be, the band had a tab, so it turned out everybody thought Gene was this flaming alky. I don't think he hardly drank. It was his two butthead friends who, were like running up for Gene's tab there. But I do remember I was at a recording session. Gene wanted Jeff and me to come, so... So we went, and they were doing the Bells of Rimney at that point.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a great song. And they were trying to do the end where they go, like on the end of it, all of them. And they were having the damnedest time, somebody was flat, and I kind of recall that Crosby was blaming Gene Clark, and finally Jim at that point, stepped in and said, Dave, you're the one that's flat, not Gene. And, of course, as later we learned that David could be a little bit difficult, that was always kind of a fun story. I always kind of liked the fact that, that he got called out on that one.
He should have been called out more because there was a documentary a couple of years ago called David Crosby, Remember My Name, and basically he admits that he's lost all his friends, even Roger McGuinn.
He was very unpleasant, and I think he was part of half of the reason that Gene... left the group. Gene didn't like to fly either. 8 Miles High was him.
That's right, yeah.
And he didn't like flying, and he certainly didn't care very much for the lovely and talented David, And I think McGuinn, from what I could gather, was really... He seemed pretty decent. He wasn't a bad guy.
No, he was nice from what I heard. And then Chris Holman was a nice guy, too.
Yeah, very much so, yeah. Didn't say much. Chris just kind of played bass and hoped he wouldn't have to have any contact with David.
That's true.
Well, I remember
I never got into any of that stuff. I didn't care actually. We were hanging out with the Byrds, and they were hot, and what the hell was not to like?
Oh yeah, I mean they were the Beatles' favorite American band.
They were, yeah. Well, they were great. I mean, they were all folkies. They were all folk singers and players and stuff, McGuinn, he played banjo for the Chad Mitchell Trio. I don't know whether you ever remember them or not, but they were kind of, there was the Kingston Trio, the Limelighters, and then and the Chad Mitchell Trio. Well, what do? Well, they sing folk songs too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so.
It was like
which isn't really fair because they actually were pretty good, but they. The Kingston Trio all played, the Limelighters all played, hell, the Brothers Four all played their instruments.
Well, it's kind
they
of
were
like,
out of Seattle.
It's kind of like, the Beatles were merged with the folk music, and that you got the Byrds with that, pretty much when you combine those two sounds together. How often did you have groups in studio with you, or did they usually just...
Not very often. You know, I don't. I had Rush. Did they do Purple something or other? John Lord, is that a guy that?
Gosh, that sounds familiar. I'm trying to remember now.
Yeah, he was in some group. He came in and he was just, he wasn't, I don't think he was stoned or anything. He just was kind of goofy, you know. How you doing? Well, mate, I'm doing fine. You know, well, that's wonderful. How's everything in Liverpool, you dipshit? You know, which I don't think he was from Liverpool. I think the only people from Liverpool were the Beatles, you know.
And the Queen Mary
maybe
boat.
Jerry and the pacemakers, you know, which was named after a medical device, I guess. I don't know.
And
what
Freddie,
do we call ourselves? Oh, there's a thing that can make your heart work. Let's do that. That'll be great, you know. Ferry across the Mersey. God, yes, I hope this ferry gets me across the Mersey and away from you.
I remember seeing some footage from the 1960s, like, you know, some teenage was asked, you know, do you already found the Beatles? No, the Beatles are has-beens. I'm into more Jerry and the Pacemakers now. I'm like,
that's a pretty good accent, you know. It's a shame nobody cares anymore. You could use that, you know.
Exactly. Now they get real British actors, and then on television in America, they get British actors to put on American accents. How many British shows have American actors putting British accents is what my question is.
Yeah. There was some show here the other day that had a kid in it, and they were saying, boy, he's really very good. Of course, once in a while that British accent comes through. I guess he's supposed to play an American boy or something, you know, but I was thinking, well, it's kind of hard to drop a British accent, you know.
Yeah.
The one I always liked was George Harrison's accent. You know, he was he was Liverpool through and through, you know.
Oh, yeah. Well, his son, Danny, looks just like him and sounds just like him.
Oh, does he really, his son?
Yeah. Danny's mother, George's second wife, Olivia, is from California, grew up in Los Angeles.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I think, I'm not sure if she was born in Mexico. I know her parents are Mexican immigrants, but I'm not sure if she was born there and then grew up here in California or was born here. But yeah, she's lived in England for years, but she has no British accent whatsoever. Totally has the California accent. Yeah.
You know, I met them kind of like a walkthrough, you know. It was in Portland, and I happened to be in Portland, and you know, they were very nice, very polite. You know, how do you do? Nice to meet you. Shook your hand. You know, looked you in the eye. Even John, you know. I think John probably got kind of bad rapped. I think he just had a little shorter fuse than George. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you know, they were in Ringo. Ringo was great. Ringo loved everybody and being a Beatle. He thought, you know, that was. Remember, due to circumstances which I don't need to go into, we got to be friendly with Derek Taylor, who was their press guy at that time here in L.A. And I, you know, we were having dinner one night, and I said, obviously everybody, you know, asks you about this. I said, but you know, we're picking up your dinner, so you can answer. You know, like I said, what were they like? And he said the best way to describe the Beatles, if you had gone to high school with them, you probably wouldn't have been friends with them. And I don't quite know what he meant by that, but apparently, you know, you probably wouldn't have been hanging out at the Frosty Freeze if they had a Frosty Freeze in Liverpool, you know. But he liked them. I mean, well, you know, they were the Beatles, for God's sake. You know, there had never been anybody as big before nor after the Beatles. You know.
No. I mean, that was what put KRLA 1110 pretty much on the map.
Oh, yeah.
After having...
Yeah, Dave Hull jumped on that like a cheap suit, you know, like, I guess you don't jump on a cheap suit. How about a swayback horse? I don't know. Really? Poor analogy.
And then you told me about some of the other personalities at KJR, Lan Roberts and his obsession with aliens.
Oh, yeah. Lan was wonderful. He was a wonderful talent. I wasn't real close to Lan only because, you know, I was in afternoons or evenings and he was in mornings, you know. So by the time I got to the station, Lan was long gone, you know, on some UFO adventure. But this is a long story. You remember what the hell is the thing with David Duchovny, the series. It was like
Alien Nation?
I don't remember. Anyway, there was a guy named Major Aho who Lan got friendly with, and he supposedly had taken many rides on the good ship Space, But he had a thing, he said, if you run into an alien, you say, Adonai Vasu, which tells you how much I thought of that out of all of the things that I've forgotten, I haven't had a break to forget that. But anyway, I was watching the David Duchovny series where they were doing a lot of outer space stuff. I forget here. But anyway, somebody came along that he was meeting that had been on a spaceship ride or something, and I remember the guy walks up to him and says, Adonai Vasu, and I thought, damn, Lan was onto something there with that. Lan was funny. He says, he said, the Venusians are out there. He said, they're trying to contact us, so I'm going to shut off the KJR transmitter for 1 minute so they can get in and communicate with us. Well, of course, he just didn't actually shut it off. He just stopped everything. Dead air, That used to make Pat O'Day crazy. Lan, don't do that. If the Venusians want to get through, they can get through. You don't have to shut the transmitter off. But God, Lan was he had one thing where he wanted to go out to the Issaquah Airport, which was obviously a small town outside of Seattle, and he wanted everybody to bring their cars and to line up on the runway and then put red cellophane on the headlights so the Venusians could see the landing strip and land. So Lan was great at he had slug races. That was a big thing that he wanted to have.
How many people showed up for that? A lot of people did show up for it, didn't they?
Oh yeah, that was the whole thing. Lan could get these poor goobers to come out and do this stuff. But no, Lan was great. He was. I used to call myself Sweet Thomas there for a while because I saw a drummer that was in a group called the Checkmates, and he was Sweet Louie. And I thought, that's kind of cool, so I was Sweet Thomas. So he always would refer to me as our beloved Sweet Thomas, so I always kind of liked that.
Now, at KISN, you were Tiger Tom Murphy.
Yeah, that was kind of, it was one of those things. At that point, we were so wired in to the kids, to the teens, of course. We had a lot of adults listening, too, mostly because the kids wouldn't change the station in the car. That was how we got them. But anyway, there was a girl, kid, just wrote me a letter, and it was like, Dear Tiger Tom. And I don't know where the hell she came up with this or why. I kind of wished I'd have saved the letter. It would come in handy these days trying to explain this, But anyway, I made some comment, like, boy, I kind of like that. Tiger Tom, that's kind of cool. Well, of course, the next night I got 15 letters. Hi, Tiger Tom. So I sort of made that mess on my own,
There we go. But it became a name, so hey.
Oh yeah, well yeah. Well, Larry Lujak said many things that were very funny, of course, but he was talking about Don Steele and me. And he said, the thing about you guys was, he said, you had something else. He said, you were world famous Tom Murphy. He used to call me Fame. Hey, Fame, get in here. And I said, the real Don Steele. He said, that really sets you guys apart, which it did. I mean, it added another little bit of pizzazz or whatever you want to call it,
Oh, yeah.
But Larry, the super jock thing was kind of like my Tiger Tom from a letter from a kid. He always kind of liked it. So then a girl wrote him and said, hi, I think you're a super jock. Bingo! That's how he became super jock. So I got Tiger Tom from a listener. The real Don Steele made it up. Actually, there was a PD in Omaha where Don was before he came to Portland. Same chain. It was the Don Burden chain, Coyle. And he claimed that he named him the real Don Steele. And I asked Don about that, and hey, baby, so that was the answer. I don't know whether that was a yes or a no. If you got a hey, baby out of Don, that meant he was pretty much through with that particular conversation.
So it remains a mystery, like, who is Tina Delgado?
You know, I've been asked that so many times, of course, because of, how big it became, and the answer is, this is the God's honest truth. I never gave it any thought, because to me it was just a drop-in, Didn't mean anything, Hey, Tina Delgado's alive, and I used to think, good,
There was all these theories about that. One said, it's kind of like a combination of a tuna and avocado, Tina Delgado. And then another was there were these teens in a horrific traffic accident, and they crashed the car, and Tina was the only one who got injured or passed out in the accident. Everybody else was fine. And then she came to and was okay. And they were like, Tina Delgado's alive. That was another theory.
But then sounds like BS to me, but
yeah. Well, I remember reading an interview with Don's wife, Sean, and she said, "I haven't a clue either. I never did ask Don what the Tina Delgado was."
I never did either.
He said, "I just
so
didn't
Sean
have the heart
and I
to."
have that in common, I guess.
Yeah, he took it with him to his grave, basically.
Yeah. He just never. I don't know. Sometimes, stuff, you just think of some goofy thing, and it kind of works, and all of a sudden it kind of takes over. And I don't know, like I say, I just never gave Tina Delgado much thought, because to me it just was a drop, just a drop-in thing.
Yeah, it became very, very popular.
God, yeah. It was a lot bigger here in L.A. than it ever was up in Portland,
Oh, yeah. I
don't know, because of the Mexican population or, we had a Mexican guy in Portland, That was it. We had a Mexican guy in Portland.
The only one.
Only one. Yeah. He called himself Doug because he figured Juan, would be a giveaway. The real Don Steele. Boy, knowing him was, Well, we named one of our cats after his wife, Gracie. We have a little cat named Gracie, just kind of, I guess, sentimental or something,
That was Don's first wife, right?
Yes, yeah, and then Sean, the second one, yeah.
Wow.
I always said Don got two of the finest women who were ever born, and he didn't really deserve either one of them,
Well, I remember, Sean, his second wife, gave me my first paying gig. I was interning with Oldies 93, and it was funny because she had just come to Oldies 93, and Don had just gone to K Earth 101 from Oldies 93. She had come from K Earth, and so they did like this switcheroo. I think they were only working together for about a month or two when Don he got a deal with K Earth they just couldn't refuse. Machine Gun Kelly's producer told me when Don was given that offer, for about a week the promotions department was vacated, and only Don, the PD, the GM, and then the Don's lawyers were there. And I think what happened was Don took a break out in the hallway, and during his shift, the sounder, he heard it and said, Oldies 93, CBS FM with Chris Taylor. And then Don said, that's it, I'm out of here. And that's when he decided to go to K Earth.
Oh, I didn't know that. Never heard that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course,
Mike Phillips, of course, loved Don, because he knew him from Portland,
Oh, I didn't know that. Was that where he did that pizza crust thing at the restaurant, or is that somewhere else? I remember he told me that.
Oh, no, that was in Seattle.
Oh.
God. That's a classic. He's a pizza crust inspector. Oh.
How often do you do that, by the way?
Oh, I don't know. Once was enough.
Yeah.
Lucky I think the guy came after him with a rolling pin or something when he finally...
And you said there were like
Mike had a wonderful sense of humor. I mean, he wasn't a real funny guy on the air, but he was very bizarre. He was a good guy.
You said
that pissed me off. He didn't throw any work my way at K Earth when he was there. I always thought, I could have used a couple of shifts just to keep my after insurance for my boy. Who had a heart condition. But,
oh yeah.
Yeah, some people, sometimes, Jay Stevens, was just furious at Mike for not hiring me. He hired Jay, of course, because they'd worked together, before. But, of course, Jay was, I remember Well, Connie and I were coming to L.A., but oddly enough, we decided to, not take 99. I don't know that Interstate 5 was up yet by this time. But anyway, if you went inland, it was more of a direct route to Los Angeles. But we decided to go the coast route, and which was a drag. I never went on 101 again, But anyway, we wanted to go see Mike Phillips, so that was why we did that. So he took us to Enrico's, which was the fettuccine capital of the world, and had a great time. Mike was good, but it was always we were listening to Jay Stevens, and I had never heard anybody with as smooth a delivery as Jay's. I'm sure there were others out there in the country, but I never heard him. But we were both, he was just doing afternoons on KFRC. And we were listening, obviously, and we were both. Connie was, she didn't really give a shit what I said on the air. She wanted to make sure the check didn't bounce. That was kind of, which they never did. I was always worked at, big enough stations that you didn't have the don't cash that check until Wednesday. One of those deals. But. Anyway, we were just kind of heading to San Francisco to see Mike, and we were listening to Jay, and she finally said, "Gee, he's smooth." And I said, "Oh, yeah." Of course, Jay had a great voice, but his delivery was so smooth. I haven't talked to him for a while. We're still friends, but God damn, I never heard any. I shouldn't say that. I'm sorry. Holy moly! There, that's better. Holy moly, holly holy! Stop it, Neil. You're getting foolish. Sweet Caroline. You hit with Sweet Caroline. That was it. Stop.
Which they sing during
that was as good as you were ever going to get.
Which they sing during the middle of the 8th inning in every Boston Red Sox game.
They do?
They do, yeah.
Oh.
I didn't even realize that until I went to
right?
Fenway Park. I know.
What the hell do you expect? Well, it was kind of a funny thing at WCFL. I never quite understood it. They were doing it before I got there, but the original job that I went to was to join Bob Dearborn and do a two-man show. And at the end of the show, we always went out with Sweet Caroline. And I don't know, Lou Witz, who was kind of an interesting guy, said, hand in hand, it was like two guys, it was kind of signifying the morning team of Dearborn and Murphy, or Dearborn and Dearborn or whoever the hell it was. And so for, a long time we played Sweet Caroline, and every now and again, the last song, every now and again, somebody would ask, and we feel that, the Lord is with us on this. I don't know what I'd tell them, I think the Lord was too good of friends with Lou Witz, come to think of it, but that was another one of those kind of goofy deals, that you run into.
This is the Talking Archive. My name is Josh Jacobs. We're talking with Tom Murphy, and next time we'll find out how he became world famous.